All right, so this is just an overview of our redaction tools on evidence.com. So I'm going to start by showing what our bulk redaction function is. So here we are on evidence.com. We're within the evidence tab, and we're specifically within my evidence, although this can also be done within the all evidence as well, but I just did my evidence for this example. So this bulk redaction feature only works on video files, not image or documents or audio. So for that reason, I kind of filtered those out by just putting video in the title. So what you're going to do is select all the pieces of evidence that you need to be redacted. And then we're going to go over here to the More Actions button, click on that, and then you'll be able to click Redact. Once you hit Redact, you're going to be able to configure the bulk redaction. So you get to select the download format that you want those to be delivered to you through email, the blur level, and for bulk redaction, the entire screen will be blurred out. So you're just choosing kind of what the level is for everything in the video. And then you have the option of whether or not you want to redact the audio in the video. So this is a great option if you have to have a super quick turnaround and get a bunch of evidence videos redacted as quickly as possible. Now looking into the redaction tools when redacting an individual evidence file. So you want to find the file that you are looking to redact within the evidence, either all evidence or my evidence tab. So then you want to click on that file once you find it, and that will bring you to what we call the evidence detail page. So in the evidence detail page, you have these settings up here to manage access and manage sharing and publishing. And then you also have auto transcription and the fast evidence review, and you're able to review the video on this page. Then there are a couple tabs down here that I wanted to talk about real quick. The first being clips and markers. So a marker is just able to mark a specific timestamp within a video for whatever reason. Some markers are automatically generated for a couple of reasons. One being if you're using a taser and it's connected to the body-worn camera. If the taser is armed or deployed, it's going to automatically place a marker at the timestamp that occurred. Similarly, it will also detect certain keywords and automatically place markers for those. So in this example, the word hand and hands and thank you were some keywords that were detected and automatically marked. You can also put a manual marker in as well if you want to kind of indicate or mark a particular timestamp. So if you're, for some reason, want to mark this point here, you're just going to hit add marker, and the marker shows up right here. And then you're able to edit that. If you want to add a description of why you marked that spot or anything like that, you can do so. Cool. And then another feature under this tab is the clips. So for clips, to add a clip, you're just kind of taking a smaller portion of the entire video and saving it as a separate file. So we do suggest if you have to redact only a portion of the longer video to make the clip first and then do the redactions on it. And that's just so you don't accidentally spend too much time redacting parts of the video that you might not actually need. But again, you can adjust the clip size and timestamps like that. And then again, you can rename it, and then you would extract it before being able to redact it from there. Cool. And then the next tab here is redactions. So under the redaction tabs, it saves down here all of the individual redaction sessions that were opened on this original video. So every single time a redaction studio session happened or any of the redaction tools were used, it is saved down here. So this is something I just like to point out to show that the original video will stay intact as you make redactions, and those will save as separate files. Once they're extracted, like this redaction 12 is, you can see it is its whole other file, which you can open on a whole different page like this, and it's its own thing that stays kind of affiliated with it. So you know they're connected at least. Cool. And then redaction tools here. So this is the first thing I want to show you. The redaction tools, we have 3 of them, and these are just our legacy tools from previous versions of redaction. So manual redaction and object tracker. These are our legacy versions, so we do have updated versions that exist within Redaction Studio. So those two aren't really used much except for users who don't have access to Redaction Studio. So the only one, and I guess the most popularly used one, would be Skin Blur. And what Skin Blur does is it basically searches for and blurs anything that is a skin tone or a skin color. So this can be a super helpful way to, again, super quickly just kind of redact anything because you know it'll get the faces. The only drawback with Skin Blur is that if there's anything in the frame that is a skin tone color, it'll also blur that. So sometimes the whole frame can become blurred for that reason. So that we don't necessarily, I guess, recommend it. It's not the most efficient. But Skin Blur, basically, you're just going to click on it, hit next. You get to select the blur level, and then you process it. And the audio will not be redacted. There's no option to redact audio with that. All right, so now we're going to open Redaction Studio and kind of show you what that looks like. So you click on Redaction Studio here, and it will open up. Cool, so this is what it looks like. So just, I guess, a little tour. We have this close button in the upper right corner. You can use that to leave the session. And like I mentioned before, this new session, which is Redaction 18, will be saved in the Redaction under the Redaction tab. And you can go in and out of it, and all of the progress will be saved every time you hit the X button. You don't have to do anything additional. And then here we have the help page. So this is helpful to kind of give you an overview of certain tools and everything. I think the most important of these tabs is the second one, the keyboard shortcuts. So these are our hotkeys. And these are extremely helpful, especially if you're doing a lot of redaction, to become familiar with. It makes the process a lot more efficient. So just good to know that you can go right over to the help button and be able to reference these whenever you need to. Cool. And then we have the extract bucket button here. That's what you're going to hit whenever you're done placing your placing your redaction masks and making sure and reviewing it to make sure everything's done correctly. So when you hit extract, you have the option to extract it as a video or an audio file, and then it will email you when that is complete, and it will save as a separate file apart from the original. And then another thing down here is this add disclaimer button. So if you click on that, this gives you the opportunity to add a disclaimer before your video. This is helpful, I guess, especially with public records requests, or if you're publicly posting a video and you need to put a disclaimer before. That is just helpful to know as well. Cool. So we'll start with the Redaction Assistant tools, which are right here in this box that says Assistant. So we recommend you look at the settings first. So in the settings, you're able to adjust the blur level for each of the 3 redaction AI assistants, which include MDT and MDC screens, license plates, and faces. So anywhere from extra light to total blackout, you can determine how heavily or non-heavily blurred you want those to be, and whether or not you want all of them to be redacted or not automatically. So once you make your adjustments to those, you're going to hit save. And then just to start those, you're going to hit start for each individual one. So down here, you see these 3 orange bars going. That just shows the progress of the 3 assistants. And as they detect certain things, you're going to see the masks pop up in this blank space down here and also on the screen up here. And that's how you know, I guess, it's working and it's started. You can exit out, again, like I mentioned. You would be able to exit out right now and let this run. And if you came back later, once it's done, it'll be done. You don't have to stay in here and wait for it to be complete. And you can also start editing and reviewing these masks as they're placed. So you can look at this now. It's still running, but this one's already placed. I can start resizing that. I can choose whether or not I want it to be redacted. I can do all that while I wait for the assistant to run the rest of the way through the video. So that's just a helpful thing to know to make the editing process and the reviewing process a little bit more efficient. Another helpful tip that we've gotten from people who are frequent users of Redaction Assistant is to review one mask at a time. So, further on, if there's maybe 2 masks in one frame, you just kind of want to follow the one all the way through and kind of check on that before moving on to others. Like here we have these two masks in the same frame. So this one you wouldn't even need. So you just want to make sure that you deal with one before you do the other. Otherwise, it gets a little bit confusing. Now moving on to the Redaction Studio tools. So those are these buttons up top above the assistant box. So we have four Redaction Studio tools. The first being the manual mask. So the manual mask is going to be blue, and you just draw it on wherever you need it to be, and you can resize it, move it around, all of that. The second button here is the object tracker. So for the object tracker, if you want to track an object, you just trace it. Say you want to track the turn signal for some reason. It's going to track it the entire time that it stays in the frame, as you see it doing down here on the scroll bar. But I will delete that for now. And those boxes will be green. The third option is audio masking, which you can draw down here on the timeline. And you have the option for a short bleep or mute. And then we also have text annotation. So those are the four tools. So the Redaction Studio tools are definitely super helpful for kind of filling in any gaps that are left by the Redaction AI assistants. The AI assistant is an assistant. It's not guaranteed to capture every single MDT screen, every single license plate, and every single face. It has sort of limitations there, and it does its best. So it's really important to kind of know how to utilize the Redaction Studio tools to fill in the gaps left by the AI assistant. So we do recommend when the Redaction assistant fails, first try Object Tracker instead. So say it misses a face because the face is too small or a license plate is too small. You can place an Object Tracker box around the face or the license plate. And in those cases, it typically will be able to follow it because it still detects it as an object, although it can't recognize that it's a face or a license plate. It's still able to track it as it moves throughout the frame. Yeah, and it also, for Object Tracker, it definitely works best if either the camera's still and the object is moving, or if the the camera is moving and the object is still. If both are moving, if you know an officer's running and somebody else is running, those are just moving too fast. There's too much happening. The Object Tracker is probably not going to be able to kind of hold on to that. It has to be moving at sort of a reasonable speed throughout the frame. Another helpful tip just to be aware of, we recommend not starting Object Tracker until at least half of the object is in the frame. And that's just because as the object kind of moves further into the frame, it may not recognize it as being the same object and slip off. So we want at least half in there so that it can kind of stick to it. And then if you do find that the object tracker isn't tracking the object well enough, you can go back to the beginning of the mask segment and try to resize the box and tighten it up around the object. If it's too wide over the object, it might have trouble kind of focusing in on what the object is that they're supposed to track. And that sometimes is the cause for it kind of slipping off. And another important thing to note about the object tracker is that if an object is being tracked and it goes off the screen out of frame, and then it re-enters the frame, the object tracker is not going to pick that up again because it doesn't recognize it as the same object. To the tracker, it's a completely new object entering the screen, so you're going to have to draw a second object tracker box to continue tracking it. So that's just something to be aware of because we know that sometimes can be a source of frustration for users. So the best situations to use a manual mask option would be if the object is moving too quickly throughout the frame for the object tracker or the redaction assistant to hold on to. Then using the manual mask and the spray painting technique, which I'll explain a little bit later, is our recommended way to deal with that. And then also if an object is sort of on the border or the edge of the frame and it's kind of moving out of frame and then back into the frame and, going kind of back and forth, using a manual mask is a lot easier because with the object tracker, like I mentioned, it's going to fall off every single time that object moves out of the frame. So it's easier to, again, just use that spray painting method and kind of just track it rather than placing a bunch of different object tracker masks. So looking at this video that we have here, if we go a little bit further into the video. So this is an example, somewhat common example of instance where maybe the redaction assistant will not pick up a face. So if you look here and you see in the side view mirror, you can see the driver's face in the reflection. So that's just something to be aware of, because a lot of times, especially when the camera is this far away, it's not going to pick that up as a face or recognize it as a face. So this is a perfect example of a situation where you would want to use an object tracker. So if I draw an object tracker around that box and kind of let it load like that,
After an Officer Spencer Frost Township Police.
It's going to follow it through the remainder of the frame. So that's an example of that. And then when looking at an instance in where we should be using a manual mask and where that's the best option, here we go. So in this situation,
for stop speed and hands-free device,
you may want to redact this driver's license. So as you can kind of see when you watch it,
texting back there when you pass me. Can you just
drop moving it pretty quickly through the frame. So using an object tracker, it's really probably not going to be able to stick to that. So in this situation,
for stop speed and hands-free,
we would want to draw a manual mask over it. And then this is the spray painting method that I was referring to. So for the spray painting method, you want to use hotkeys, which are going to be the A key and the D key. So the A key will rewind the video one frame, as you can see, and then the D key will fast forward one frame. So there you go. So what you're going to do is you're going to hold onto the box and go frame by frame and move the box as needed. You can also resize it as it gets closer to the camera.
Back there when you pass me.
I'm going to hold it. Ooh. So there we go. So frame by frame, you want to follow that and make sure that it's covered in each frame since it is moving so quickly. Okay, so now it's out of the frame. So at this point, you're going to want to cut the box, because if you can see down on the timeline, it goes much longer than where the current playhead is at. And you can actually trim the mask to exactly where the playhead is at right now by using the close bracket hotkey. So if I hit that, you see it trims it down to there. And then if we rewatch that,
reason for stop speed and hands-free device, you were texting back there when you passed me. Can you just
drop this back? Follows it as it kind of moves throughout the frame. Cool. And then another just quick, I guess, example of when
back window's pretty tinted for me.
The object tracker. So in this example, this is another example of when Redaction Assistant might not pick up a face or recognize that there is a person. So there's this child in the back seat, and there's a couple reasons. One, she's so far away and her face isn't really visible, but also it is kind of a dark background, so it might not pick it up. So in this case, object tracker would be great to use because it is a big object. So it recognizes that something's there and that it needs to be followed. And similarly, during this, we also see...
Everything valid? Any problems with your license? No. Okay, just hang on this. Let me go run your information. I'll be right with you, okay?
We see the side profile here that's not being covered. Again, this is a common complaint we hear about our Redaction AI assistant missing that. So in this situation, again, since it's so close, not even half of her head is really in the frame, this wouldn't be an example of a time that object tracker would be useful. So we want to rewind to when her face kind of enters the frame and then place that manual mask. And again, we're using the spray painting method to make sure that that stays covered as it remains in the frame. And then again, we can trim it with that close bracket button. So just a quick look at the other two Redaction Studio tools that I mentioned before. So this first with the audio mask. So the audio mask can be placed onto the timeline. If you want to redact the audio here for some reason, you would just, drag it to wherever you wanted it to mask. And then in order to be able to actually preview that, you're going to have to click off of it, click onto another mask, and then you'll be able to. and actually hear the beep and the masking that's happening. Although that is a way to do it, the way that we actually recommend placing an audio mask that makes it more efficient is by using our hotkey, which is the M key. So again, for example, if you're playing the video, listening back, and then you decide right here you want to mute the audio, you hold down the M key. You can see the mask being placed. And then if you want to stop masking it, you're just going to release it, and then the mask is placed. So that is our recommended way of doing that. And then this last tool here is the text annotation tool. So this is super straightforward. You're just going to select, you can write whatever you want. And then you have the option now to move it wherever you want on the screen. You can adjust the font size, decrease it, whatever you want to do, place it where it wants to go. And then again, like the other types of masks, you're either able to trim it to the playhead to determine how long you want it to stay on the screen. The one thing I will point out about the text annotation tool, because there is some confusion surrounding it, is that you are not able to use the spray paint method with the text annotation tool. So for example, if I try to do it and I'm doing the spray paint method frame by frame, moving it around, when you play it back, you're not going to see it move. It's just going to stay in one place, wherever that last location was that you dropped it, that's where it's going to stay. So that's just something I like to point out, just so you kind of understand that that's how the text annotation works. Great. And then once you're done with the video, you're done reviewing it, making sure all the masks are placed correctly, you're going to come up here and hit that extract button. So you have the option to extract it as a video or as an audio file. And then you're just going to hit extract, and the media will start processing, and then you will receive an email once that extraction is completed, and then you'll be able to view it from there.